In this worksheet called Manipulating, we're seeing a pivot table that's based on data in the previous sheet called Creating. And as we're looking at the data, imagine we're making a presentation. Perhaps this presentation has run its course. We've talked about the various sales levels, and we'd like to consider some other presentation options using the data that's being reflected in our pivot table fields. We might want to see a breakout here by which customers are buying which product. Maybe we don't want to see salesperson here. So a few options. We can drag the word salesperson out of this panel. Perhaps more directly, simply uncheck the box for salesperson. Our pivot table momentarily has a completely different look, but we want to see the word customer in the rows area. If you click the box for a text field, it will automatically appear in the rows area. We could drag it there, but why not simply click the box for customer? And now we see an alphabetized list of our customers. We're still seeing the same total as before, but now we're seeing a different layout of the data. We have this quick ability to redisplay information. And the word pivot comes from the concept that sometimes when you're viewing the data, you might want to have those fields that are across row 4, for example, bamboo coffee table, end table, etc. You might want to have those appear down the left-hand side and have the customer names currently in column A appear in row 4. So the word pivot implies we're pivoting this data from the upper left-hand corner. Now this doesn't reflect a single action. It simply means changing the positions of those two fields. And so in the pivot table field list, and in no particular order, we're going to drag product into the rows area and then customer into the columns area. And as we do this, I'm going to pause after I drag product into the rows area to recognize that the list that we have over to the left, possibly that's a layout you might want to consider printing. Let's now take customer and drag that into columns. Now, is that a better layout? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're trying to make this layout reflect something you have done in prior years. It's so easy to change the positioning of these fields. And we're not limited to just two fields. We might want to see a breakout here by region. I'm going to click the box for region, which means it will go into the rows area. We now see regions as well as products here. We might want to adjust some of the column widths there. And we're viewing the data this way. It's certainly not as compact as before. Maybe it's not ideal for a live presentation, but for the printed page, that's not that much information. And we see another way to group the data. And furthermore, as we look at this field list, what if we flip the order of product and region? In the pivot table field list, product appears above region. In the actual pivot table, it appears to the left of region. Let's drag product downward. Watch the display to the left. Now we see it grouped by region. Here and there, you have this idea of how this is going to look better. Sometimes you're thinking of how it will appear as a presentation, how it's going to appear on the printed page, or maybe you're just analyzing the data yourself. You think of different ways to group the information. And as we do this, we have no fear whatsoever that in any way we're altering our original data. A pivot table is distinct and separate from that source data. And this brings up an issue we have to think about from time to time. First of all, let me simplify this list again by removing region. Another option here, another placement for a field can be in the area called filters. As I drag region into the filters area here, watch the pivot table, we now see region up here. And possibly we might want to see different regions. We can click the drop arrow and use this like a filter. See all of them, select multiple items, maybe click just one. We're just looking at Southeast data now. Sometimes you put a field in the filters area simply to move it away momentarily. You'll get back to it later. What if we make a change to the original data? The source data here is in the sheet called Creating. Our total here is 7997. Imagine a little scenario here. We're going back to the original data. It turns out that one of the entries here was incorrect. Harold Vaughn actually sold 12 of these items. We're going to change this to a 12. Before we do, let's go back to the manipulating sheet and remind ourselves of a couple things. The grand total is 7997. If we're going to increase the items by 3, this is going to jump to 8,000. Let's say we're not so much concerned with the salesperson, but it's the item, Captain Recliner. Back to the pivot table again. Captain Recliner. We've got 1,403 of those. So let's add 3 to the list. We'll change this 9 to be a 12. We press enter. We go over to the pivot table on the next sheet. And what has happened? Nothing. This is still 7997. This is still 1403. And that might come as a surprise. When you work with Excel, you learn very early that formulas react to changes in cells. Charts react to changes in the source data. But in pivot tables, you have to refresh the pivot tables to make them be up to date. So clicking within the pivot table and using a keystroke shortcut, Alt F5, or going to the Analyze button, choose Refresh. And now the data is refreshed. The 1403 is now 1406. Our total is now 8,000. And you constantly have to be aware of that idea as you work with pivot table data. Making changes to your source data does not change the pivot table. You have to make changes yourself by refreshing it.